Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first discussion on unit number 1, and today we're going to talk about organizations and reframing. One of the things that's incredible about organizations in our time is how many of them suddenly seem to go from doing okay to in serious trouble. In 2008, in September, everything seemed to be just fine with the markets, and then there was a lack of liquidity in the markets. The markets fell. It probably affected the outcome of the presidential election. It certainly cost a lot of people their jobs, and it re-established a new order in terms of who had wealth and who didn't. The pain was widespread and extensive. In corporations, it's also happened. Enron had been chugging along just fine, and I remember doing a workshop in Dallas, Texas, and I went down there, and a man was very articulate, attended my workshop. I said, "What do you want to do?" He said, "Well, I want to be a greeter at Walmart." He looked so professional and so confident. I said, "Why do you want that job?" He said, "Well, I had been in high management with Enron and had taken an early retirement. My entire life's fortune was in Enron stock, and it went from a great deal per share to pennies per share until there was nothing left." He said, "Suddenly I found myself 55 years old with no income, no job, and no skills, building up from the beginning." What happened? What causes the organizational collapse when things just seem to go down? What happens when things are moving along? One of the things that we can look at is the issue and the challenge of what is called framing. Ordinary leaders work on a type of autopilot. That is, they come in the morning and she sits at her desk and works through the same pile of papers and deals with the same phone calls and emails in the same order, and day after day things work pretty much on routine. But meanwhile, around the corner, things could be changing and becoming significantly different. When that happens, a crisis may emerge. Now, when a crisis emerges and there are problems that have to be addressed, most leaders respond with one pattern of response. What I want to suggest is that I want you to have at least 4 frames of response possible as you look at the situation. The first is the structural frame, and the structural frame, you could think about that as something like a factory or a machine. We have procedures, rules, orders, a sequence, input, flow, output. And as we come here, we say, how do we attune our structures to the task? The second approach is a human resources approach. Here, people often think of the organization as family. This is often the case in nonprofit organizations, smaller family-owned firms, and of course in religious and congregational organizations. Here people talk about empowerment, making sure that everybody is heard, and the challenge becomes to align organization and human needs. A third category is political. It's a jungle out there, say those who see organizations as a jungle. It's the war of all against all, as Thomas Hobbes said. They look at power, conflict, competition, organizational politics. Clearly, this is the dominant mood of investigation for the Fox networks. What's going on? It's a war for control of the United States. Here, people take the position of being advocates. Are you with us or against us? And so people need to develop agendas and power bases. Finally, there's some people, some leaders who look at the situation from a symbolic point of view. And here they may say, it's the great carnival of life, it's the great dance of change. Other people may say, we're looking at the temple of leadership, and still others may refer to it as political theater or political drama. And here people look at the story of culture, what is meaning, epistemology, metaphor, ritual, ceremony, stories, and heroes. Many of the stories about leadership that you read are from this frame, and they see the leader as the hero, single-handedly leading the charge and saving the organization, the country, the ship, the production line, or the community. This type of frame relies a lot on inspiration and motivation, and people talk about creating faith, beauty, and meaning. Whichever one of those you have, there certainly are limits to the way that people think in terms of that. So you can have leaders in reaction, and those are the leaders on autopilot. They have one response and they tend to stay within that quadrant. So for example, leaders may often have a limited view of their organization and say, what's going on? Well, there's a problem. What's the problem? The problem is with Fred, the problem is with Pat, the problem was with Sarah, the problem was with Luke. Regardless of the problem source, managers often choose rational and structural solutions. Give me the facts and let's restructure, restructure, restructure. So leaders are often looking for the one right answer that will fix everything. This is the magic bullet approach. What would happen if leaders thought differently? If they were more flexible, more adaptive, more practical, and more engaged with the reality where they are? Such leaders would need a holistic framework to encourage proper inquiry into a range of significant issues. They could look at people, power, structure, symbols. They would need a palette that offers an array of options. Would you need additional training? Yes, but what about bargaining? What about cooperation as well as conflict? What about celebration as well as reorganization? Such leaders would need to be looking at creativity, be willing to take risks by doing something new, and these leaders often respond with a certain degree of playfulness. Leaders need passionate and unwavering commitment to principle combined with flexibility in understanding and responding to events. My first rule on this is what I call the 11th Beatitude. Blessed are the flexible, for those leaders will never be bent out of shape. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.